Hello and welcome to the next video in the series. In this video I want to answer the question, who can a SSAS pension lend money to and under what terms? Now bear with me a second while I just share my screen and we're away. So let's answer the first half of the question to begin with. Who can a SSAS pension lend money to? Well, there's a list of people that a SSAS can lend money to, and this includes the sponsoring employer, an associated employer, as long as it's been formally associated beforehand, company which is not connected to the scheme or its members, and an individual who is not connected to the scheme or its members. A SSAS cannot lend money to scheme members, whether they be past or current, an individual connected to a member, so this would include family members, and they could even be as remote as a cousin, a company connected to the member that is not associated or connected to the scheme. Now, before we move on, let me just explain what a connected party is from HMRC's point of view. HMRC view a connected party as a scheme member, spouse or a relative of a scheme member, a partnership where a scheme member, spouse or relative of a scheme member is a partner, and an employer not participating in the scheme but controlled by a scheme member, spouse or relative of a scheme member, or jointly by a number of connected parties. So if we make a loan, what can it be used for? All loans must be made for a genuine reason, and the genuine reason is assisting the trade of the borrower, and the loan must be used for this reason. So we could use a loan for a purchase of a commercial property, purchase of stock, purchase of plants, or even the purchase of machinery. But it's important to note that loans made to keep an ailing business going by boosting its cash flow would not be allowed. How much can the SSAS lend? Well, the maximum loan to a sponsoring or associated employer is 50% of the net value of the pension scheme's assets. So that's 50% of the assets less any loans that have already been made. The 50% rule does not apply, strangely enough, to unconnected parties. And we'll talk a little bit later about that in this video. Now, if a loan exceeds the 50% limit, an authorised payment charge will apply. And this is basically a hefty tax penalty that's made by HMRC. So if we make a loan, does it need to be secured? All loans made to employers participating in the scheme must be secured throughout the term of the loan. And the security requirements are as follows. The asset on which the security is made must have a real value, and it would need to be independently valued. The value of the asset must be at least equal to the loan capital plus the interest payable over the term of the loan. And the security must be a first legal charge over the asset. Second or third charges would not be allowed. Now, the security does not have to be provided by the borrowing party. It can be provided by other parties, such as other scheme members, other pension scheme members, or other family members. So what kind of things can we use as security? Well, a few examples would be commercial property, certain business assets, stock, or even personal investments, such as land or an investment portfolio. Now, interestingly, HMRC state that residential property can be used as security. But residential property falls into their category of taxable property. Taxable property can be used as security, providing two conditions are met. The first condition is that the SSAS does not pay for any of the fees or costs of making the loan or the legal charge. And the second condition is that the legal charge document does not contain a mortgage imposition clause. So on foreclosure, the SSAS does not take ownership of the asset, but only enforces the sale. But I think it's also important to know that if the borrower defaults on any loan payments or breaches the terms of the agreement, the SSAS trustees must take all available steps to enforce the repayment of the loan. There must be no preferential treatment given to a sponsoring employer when enforcing the collection of the loan, even where this could result in the company being placed into liquidation. As always, failure to comply with these terms will have consequences, and that's usually an unauthorised tax charge, and we know that these can be fairly hefty. So what interest is payable on a loan? All loans must charge a minimum interest rate of 1% above the average of the 6 leading high street banks' base rates. And this is an HMRC stipulation. Now, in March 2020, the base rate is 0.75%. So including the 1%, the minimum interest rate payable will be 1.75%. And as anyone who's tried to borrow money would recognise that this is a pretty good rate. But the SSAS could charge a more commercial rate of interest if it's so required. And also remember that the interest that's being paid is going back into your pension scheme. How long can the loan be for? Well, a loan can be for a period of up to 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, it must be fully repaid, and in terms of both interest and capital. How is the loan repaid? The loan will be repaid in equal instalments of capital and interest for each complete year of the loan. Now, it can be paid on a monthly, quarterly, half-yearly or annual basis, but the requirement is that at least one payment of capital and interest is made in each 12-month period. And finally, what about making a loan to an unconnected third party? Well, a SSAS can make loans to an unconnected party. And the broad definition of this is a personal company who is not connected to a scheme member by marriage, family, or business. Now, there are no specific terms given by HMRC with regards to an unconnected third-party loan, but the trustees should ensure that any loan is prudent, secure, and on a commercial basis. No specific limit on the percentage of the fund that can be lent to an unconnected party, and neither is there a time scale or a requirement for security to be available. But as we said, the loan needs to be made on a very prudent basis. Now, any loans that you make to a third party must not be made for the purpose of purchasing taxable property, such as residential property, vehicles, yachts, jewellery, fine art, fine wines, etc. Okay, so I hope that's given you a fairly clear idea as to how a loan can be used and what terms a loan can be made under. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again on another video. Goodbye.